There's a silence in your heart that no one else in your family seems to hear. A fire in your soul that burns a little brighter, even when the world around you grows cold. And sometimes you wonder, why does no one else feel this way? Why am I the only one carrying this weight, this longing, this sense of something more? You laugh with them, but your laughter feels borrowed. You speak your truth, but it echoes in rooms where no one's listening. You cry in silence because they wouldn't understand, even if you tried to explain. It's like you were born into a family, but not into belonging. And here's the sacred truth they never taught you. You were not born to fit in. You were born to awaken. You were planted in that family, not for comfort, but for transformation. You are not the outcast. You are the catalyst. God never chooses the entire crowd. He chooses the one who can see the cracks in the foundation and isn't afraid to rebuild, the one who breaks generational curses while carrying emotional bruises no one even notices, the one who feels called to something bigger, even when it doesn't make sense. Maybe you've always been told you're too sensitive, too serious, too spiritual, too much. But what if everything they said was too much is exactly what God needed in a chosen one? Can you feel that truth stirring in your soul right now? If this message is reaching you today, it's not by chance. It's divine timing. It's because your spirit is ready to remember what your mind has been trying to forget. You were set apart for a holy purpose. And yes, that often means being the only one in your family who feels the pull, hears the call, and chooses to answer. In every generation, God selects a single vessel, someone bold enough to carry the light when darkness has become tradition. Think of Abraham, who left everything familiar to follow God. Think of Joseph, rejected by his brothers, but chosen to save them. Think of Esther, raised in exile, but born for such a time as this. God doesn't choose randomly, he chooses intentionally, and his choice often lands on the most unlikely one in the family, the one who doesn't blend in because they're meant to stand out. So if your spirit is already resonating with this, if your heart is racing and your eyes are welling up for reasons you can't explain, take a moment right now and comment 777, a sign of spiritual completion and divine calling. Let the world know, I'm one of the ones. And to every beautiful soul who has supported this mission with a super thanks, I see you, I honor you, and I thank you deeply. You are helping us reach those who feel lost, those who feel forgotten, those who were born to rise. Now, stay with me, because in the next moments, we're going to unlock one of the deepest spiritual mysteries. Why does God choose only one per family? Why do you carry the weight, the vision, the voice, while the rest seem untouched? Could it be that your life is not just a story, but a spiritual assignment? Let's go deeper together. The answers you've been carrying in your heart are about to come into the light. God's chosen ones. Why does God choose only one per family? Let's be honest. The moment you began to understand you were chosen, it didn't feel like a divine reward. It felt like a quiet kind of war, one no one around you could see, yet it thundered inside you every single day. You weren't just burdened with your own struggles. You were carrying wounds your family never had the strength to face, pain inherited through silence, denial, and fear. Why does it always seem like the chosen one suffers the most? Could it be because you were sent to break what others bowed to? You walk into rooms and the atmosphere shifts. Eyes don't meet yours the same. Conversations feel slightly altered, and deep down, you know why. You see through masks. You hear what goes unsaid. You carry discernment, not because you sought it, but because you were born with it. The spiritual patterns that have enslaved your bloodline for generations. You didn't just notice them. you felt them, and somehow you've always known they end with you. This wasn't about strength, it was about willingness. God chose you, not because you were the most powerful, but because you were the most available. When everyone else ran from the truth, you stayed. When others avoided conflict, you leaned in. You were willing to lose peace temporarily in order to establish peace permanently. Isn't that exactly what Jesus did? In Isaiah 6:8, God asked, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And the answer came from one willing soul, "Here I am, send me." Can you see now? That has always been you, even when you didn't speak it aloud. You've forgiven people who never repented. You've offered love in homes that never taught how to receive it. You've broken behaviors that felt eternal, and you did it all silently without applause. No one claps when you kill a demon your family made peace with. No one celebrates when you say no more to the curse they called normal. But heaven does. The throne room records every unseen battle you've won. Matthew 5:10 reminds you, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Could your suffering be a sign of the spiritual authority you're stepping into? Think of Joseph, betrayed by blood, sold by brothers, forgotten in prison. Yet in Genesis 50:20, he said to them, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Do you see the parallel? What if your rejection was God's redirection? What if the betrayal was a bridge? Even today, people like Malala Yousafzai, shot for seeking education, rose not in bitterness, but purpose. She became the youngest Nobel Peace Prize laureate. She once said, "When the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful." And in your case, that voice is yours. So ask yourself gently, what if your pain is prophecy? What if every silent tear watered the ground for a harvest you haven't even seen yet? Could this ache be the evidence that you're not being punished but positioned? Romans 8:18 offers this promise. "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." And 2 Corinthians 4:17 echoes, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." When no one noticed your sacrifice, he did. When no one praised your growth, he celebrated it. Because you were never meant to be applauded by the crowd. You were meant to be approved by the throne. If you feel like the only one in your family waking up, healing and seeing, there's a reason. There's always only one per generation bold enough to bear what others ignored. And if you've made it this far, could it be because you were always the one? That isolation you've been enduring, those seasons when even your shadow seemed like your only companion, weren't punishment. They were preparation. That silence wasn't neglect. It was God pulling you aside to sharpen you in sacred solitude. He wasn't ignoring you. He was shaping you. Because some weapons are too precise to be forged in noise. And you were always meant to cut through darkness, not blend in with it. Those delays, the ones that made you question whether you missed your moment, those weren't detours. They were divine alignments. God was rearranging timelines, removing counterfeits, recalibrating your soul for something far bigger than your comfort. Ecclesiastes 3:11 reminds us, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." Can you sense that even your waiting was woven into God's perfect design? The tension you constantly feel, the weight pressing on your chest when everyone else seems carefree, that's not anxiety, that's destiny resting on your shoulders. Others were permitted to stay comfortable in chaos. You were called to rise through it. Why? Because when God entrusts someone with oil, true anointing, he also allows them to feel the pressing, the crushing, the breaking. Just like olives must be crushed to produce oil, your spirit was pressed so it could carry presence. That's the part others don't see. They admire your strength but overlook your scars. They see the light in your eyes but never knew how many nights you cried in the dark, whispering prayers like, "God, "Take this calling away from me." But he didn't. Not because he wanted you to suffer, but because he knew you wouldn't quit. He trusted you with weight others couldn't carry. Have you ever wondered why your emotions run so deep? Why you cry over things no one else even notices? Why even in moments of joy, there's a whisper of heaviness following you? Could it be because you're not just living for yourself? You're carrying generations, healing what your ancestors couldn't, preparing what your descendants will walk into. You are the bridge between what was and what must come. You are the wall that stops the spiritual invasions that plagued your bloodline. You are the first of your kind, the pioneer soul God raised up in this season for a reason. Jeremiah 1:5 declares, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Doesn't that stir something in you? A reminder that your identity was never an accident, but an assignment. And maybe no one ever told you this before, but the burden you've been carrying, the tears you've swallowed, the aching in your chest that you couldn't name, none of it was the end of your story. It was the beginning of a holy awakening, the moment your soul started to remember who it really is, chosen, separated, sent. Do you know the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who stood against the Nazi regime at the cost of his own life? Before his execution, he said, "When Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die." Yet, Bonhoeffer didn't die in despair. He died in purpose. And like you, he understood. This journey was never about surviving. It was about transforming everything it touches. You were never called to carry the weight so you could endure it alone. You were called to carry it because every step you take with it rewrites the story for those who come after. Every tear you shed waters the soil for someone else's freedom. Every battle you fight in silence breaks the chains for someone you may never meet. And in the next few minutes, everything is about to shift. You're going to see why this calling, this burden, this fire in your bones, was never about pain. It was always about transformation, about becoming a vessel of change so powerful that everything that touches you is made new. Stay close. What you're about to hear next might finally give clarity to the deepest part of your story, the part you've lived through but never fully understood. Let's talk about something most people avoid at all costs: divine isolation. Not ordinary loneliness, which passes with a phone call or a hug, but that sacred, haunting kind of separation that comes directly from God. It's the holy space where everything you once found comfort in begins to disappear, where your favorite voices grow silent, where even the faces you've known your entire life seem distant and unfamiliar. You stand in the center of your family, your community, your circle, but no one really sees you. They look at your face but miss your soul. Does that sound like your story? You arrive with a heart full of love, ready to give, ready to build bridges, and they answer with silence. You speak truth, not out of arrogance, but from discernment and love, and they label it defiance. You share your light, and somehow your brightness offends their shadows. Why is it that the more you evolve, the more isolated you become? The answer is hidden in Scripture. In Mark 6:4, Jesus said, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives and in his own home." Even Jesus, the Son of God, was rejected by those who knew him best. Isn't it astonishing that the same people who watched you grow up often become the ones who cannot accept who you're becoming? That's because divine isolation is not about rejection. It's about revelation. God isn't punishing you by pulling people away. He's preparing you by pulling you apart. In the silence, you stop depending on others to affirm your identity. In the stillness, you finally hear his voice louder than theirs. Could it be that isolation is the cocoon in which God hides his chosen before he reveals them? Remember the story of Elijah. After calling down fire from heaven, he fled into the wilderness. alone, exhausted, desperate. But it was in that cave, in the solitude, where God whispered to him, not through fire or wind, but in a still small voice. 1 Kings 19:11-12. Are you in that cave right now, feeling forgotten, but actually being found? Even outside the Bible, this pattern appears. Frida Kahlo, the famous Mexican painter, spent much of her life confined to a bed due to chronic illness. Her isolation wasn't chosen, but it birthed world-changing art. She once wrote, "I paint myself because I'm so often alone and because I am the subject I know best." Could your divine isolation be the furnace forming something immortal within you? You were never meant to blend in. That's why comfort had to leave. That's why the familiar had to fade. Because chosen ones don't rise in crowds. They rise in deserts. You were separated so you could be sanctified. And yes, the silence hurts. Yes, the distance stings. But what if this silence is a sacred invitation? What if those who misunderstand you are part of the pruning, and the empty space they leave is where God builds his throne? John 15:2 says, "He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful." Maybe the disconnect wasn't a breakdown. Maybe it was a breakthrough. So as you walk this lonely road, remember, you're not being exiled. You're being elevated. You're not invisible. You're being hidden for a reason, for a season, for divine revelation. And when the time is right, your unveiling will leave no doubt about who sent you. But listen closely now. This part is important. You haven't been abandoned. You've been set apart. There's a sacred difference. Abandonment leaves you empty, but divine separation, that is God's way of consecrating you. Because chosen ones are never meant to be planted in the crowd. They're pulled out of it, not to isolate you in pain, but to anoint you in purpose. You move differently. You speak in ways that pierce deeper. You see things no one else in your family line has dared to look at, not because you're better, but because you're built for something beyond the boundaries they've accepted as normal. You don't fit in because you're meant to stand apart. You're not here to follow inherited dysfunction. You're here to dismantle it. Isn't that why you've always felt like the outsider, even among your own people? Why peace for you never came from blending in, but from breaking through? You carry a heavenly assignment, so earthly approval will always be scarce. You can't expect those tied to comfort to celebrate your calling. As Jesus himself said in Mark 6:4, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives and in his own home." If even the Son of God faced dishonor in his own house, why would you expect the journey of the chosen to come with applause? Think of Joseph. God gave him a vision of royalty. He saw his future in dreams long before anyone else believed in him. And how did his own brothers respond? Not with celebration, but betrayal. They didn't despise him because he was weak. They threw him in a pit because they could sense the crown before it ever touched his head. Genesis 37 tells us plainly, they hated him all the more because of his dreams and what he had said. Have you ever felt hated, not for what you've done, but for who you're becoming? That's divine isolation. It's not cruelty, it's God's strategy. He's removing you from the noise, from the cycles, from the distractions that once defined your identity. Why? So he can whisper what can't be spoken in chaos. He's taking you out of patterns and into preparation, because what he's about to do with your life cannot be built on shallow foundations. Before God elevates you publicly, he always hides you privately. Think of David. Before he ever faced Goliath, he was alone in the fields tending sheep. No stage, no crowd, just the sound of nature, the weight of a sling, and the presence of God. That field was not obscurity, it was preparation for kingship. Could it be that your hidden season is not a delay, but a divine setup? Even in our modern world, some of the most impactful voices rose from seasons of isolation. Martin Luther King Jr., a preacher and prophet for justice, often withdrew in silence to seek clarity before every major movement he led. He once said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." And isn't that your life? Standing where few dare to stand, between what is and what must be. So, yes, you may be hidden now, misunderstood, pushed away by those who can't comprehend the size of your anointing. But what if this is the very sign that God is preparing something no one else can carry but you? What if the separation was never about rejection, but about protection, because you weren't created to echo the voices around you? You were chosen to be a voice in the wilderness, and when the time is right, your emergence will not require validation, it will demand recognition. Think about it for a moment. The butterfly does not grow its wings in the wind, under applause, or in front of an audience. It develops in silence, in darkness, in a cocoon that looks lifeless to the outside world. No one cheers for the transformation because no one can see it happening. And maybe that's exactly where you are now, in your own spiritual cocoon, hidden, misunderstood, slowly becoming something unrecognizable, even to yourself. Have you been feeling like no one gets you lately? That the more you grow, the more others pull away? Do you find yourself asking why certain doors suddenly closed without warning? Why friendships that once felt eternal now echo with silence? Why even your family, the ones who should know your heart, now look at you as if you're a stranger? Pause right there. This isn't punishment. This is positioning. You're not losing people. You're losing access to what can't follow you into your next chapter. The cocoon is not a grave. It's a holy hallway. A sacred space between the past you're shedding and the future God is shaping. That silence surrounding you, it's not abandonment. It's the very atmosphere in which God does his most masterful work. Away from the noise, away from the spotlight, with no likes, no comments, no affirmations, but with eternal purpose. Isaiah 45:3 says, "I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord." Could it be that this hidden place is the very place God is unlocking your true inheritance? Because here's the secret the world rarely tells you. The higher the calling, the deeper the separation. The louder your destiny, the quieter your preparation. God doesn't craft chosen vessels in crowds. He forges them in deserts. And perhaps that's why you've been walking through your own wilderness lately. Everything around you feels silent. You feel unseen, unheard, forgotten. But heaven hasn't forgotten you. It's forming you. God is not ignoring your cries. He's using the silence to strip away everything shallow so that you emerge clothed in eternal depth. Look at Moses. Before he ever stood before Pharaoh, before he ever led the Israelites through the Red Sea, he spent 40 years hidden in Midian, far from palaces, far from recognition. Why? Because God was forming a leader who could carry freedom. Exodus 3:4 reminds us that God didn't speak to Moses in a crowd. He waited until Moses was alone at a burning bush. In modern times, consider the journey of J.K. Rowling, a single mother on welfare who felt invisible and rejected by publishers before the world knew the name Harry Potter. She once said, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." What if your current silence isn't emptiness, but the foundation for something the world has never seen before? You're not in a delay. You're in divine design. God is crafting something so rare, so needed, so holy through you that it couldn't be done in public. It had to be done in privacy, because some anointings are too precious to be exposed too early. And when the time comes, and it will, the cocoon will break. The wilderness will end. The pit will turn into a throne. Just like Joseph's prison became a palace in one day, your story will shift when God decides the time is right. And when it happens, the same people who doubted you, dismissed you, and distanced themselves from you, they won't be able to look away from what God does with your life. So, hold still, chosen one. Something eternal is unfolding, and the silence you're in now, it's not the absence of God, it's the sound of heaven working in secret. But before that moment arrives, before the doors open, before the elevation comes, before your story shifts in front of everyone's eyes, there's one more truth you need to grasp. One more divine layer to your identity that explains so much of what you've silently carried. It's something most people overlook, yet it's the very reason why you feel everything so deeply, why your emotions run like rivers beneath your skin, why your soul seems to ache in rooms where others feel nothing. You weren't made to be numb, you were made to be sensitive, but not in a worldly, fragile way. In a divine, prophetic way. Your heart wasn't designed for surface-level existence. It was crafted to carry depth, intercession, revelation, and mercy. While others can laugh off pain, you carry it in prayer. While others turn away, you lean in. Why? Because your heart was wired by God to carry burdens before others even recognize they exist. Romans 8:26 tells us, "The Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words." Could it be that your soul has been groaning with the Spirit all along? That what others call too emotional is actually a spiritual radar tuned to heaven's frequency. And perhaps you've never been told this before, but your ability to feel intensely, profoundly, spiritually is not a flaw. It's a signal, a clue, a divine whisper about the gift buried inside you, a gift that may have been dormant, misunderstood, or even rejected until now. Because what we're about to uncover next has the power to awaken something inside of you that's been waiting for this very moment. A calling, a mantle, a spiritual authority that has always been there, just beneath the surface, waiting for you to remember. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you feel it rise in you, your life will never be the same. Keep watching. What comes next might be the very revelation your heart has been waiting for. Have you ever felt like you're carrying a kind of awareness that no one around you even senses? Like you're tuned into a frequency that doesn't match the room you're standing in? While others laugh freely, your spirit weeps quietly. While they're entertained by distractions, your soul is drawn to something deeper, more eternal. And late at night, while the house sleeps peacefully, you lie awake, not in fear, but with a knowing, a spiritual alertness, a divine tension that keeps tugging at your heart. What is that? And why do you feel it when no one else seems to? It's not paranoia, it's perception. And it wasn't learned, it was given. Because while they sleep through what looks like peace, you sense something is off in the atmosphere, something unspoken in your family, something spiritual beneath the surface. You feel it in the walls, in the tone of their voices, in the sighs that try to hide what words won't say. This is what it means to live with a heightened sense, a spiritual sensitivity not given to everyone. Every word weighs more in your ears. Every glance feels charged. Even silence speaks volumes, and you hear it all. Does it ever make you wonder why you were designed to be this deeply attuned? Why you feel like a lightning rod in your own home? 1 Corinthians 2:14 says, "The person without the Spirit does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but considers them foolish. But the person with the Spirit makes judgments about all things." What you're sensing is not imagined, it's spiritual. You're not emotionally fragile, you're spiritually aware. And that awareness runs so deep that you notice things no one else is even looking for. You see how your sister's smile never quite reaches her eyes. You catch the hesitation in your father's voice when he says, "I'm fine." You pick up on the quiet tension between your parents, even when they insist nothing is wrong. You feel the fractures in your family's foundation, cracks that others have learned to ignore, but you cannot unsee. Why? Because you were never called to be blind to brokenness. You were called to heal it. This is the cost of being chosen, to feel what others bury, to discern what others dismiss. You live in a constant awareness that there's a storm building, even when everyone else sees blue skies. That's not a burden, it's a sign. God has marked you as a watchman, a spiritual intercessor, a carrier of unseen truths. Like the prophet Jeremiah, who said in Jeremiah 20 verse 9, "His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I cannot hold it in." You feel what you feel because you're designed to carry what others can't. And in modern times, even people like Maya Angelou, poet, survivor, and truth-teller, spoke about this kind of sensitivity. She said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." You know that agony well, don't you? That deep ache of feeling too much and saying too little. That internal fire to speak what others refuse to hear. So if you've ever questioned why you feel more, sense more, carry more, it's because you were created for more. You're not broken. You're equipped. And your gift of spiritual discernment is not a curse. It's a compass. One that's guiding you toward the role you were always meant to play. The one who stands in the gap. The one who intercedes. The one who sees what's hiding in plain sight and refuses to let it go unhealed. You feel everything. You absorb what others overlook. You carry emotions that don't even belong to you, yet you hold them like sacred assignments. And in moments of crisis, when the world spins wildly, when confusion clouds every corner, while others begin to unravel, you're the one who bows your head and prays. Not because you're fearless, but because you've learned where your true strength comes from. You don't crumble. You cover. You don't flee. You stand. Eyes closed, heart open, spirit alert. You become the still point in the storm. It's not that you don't feel fear. You do. You're human. But the difference is, you don't let fear lead. You let faith speak louder. You listen to the whispers of heaven while the world shouts in panic. You respond with quiet authority, not because you're perfect, but because your sensitivity is not emotional weakness, it's divine discernment. Isaiah 26:3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." Could it be that your peace in chaos is the fruit of your connection to something far greater than circumstance? This right here is not fragility, it's spiritual strength in its most raw, refined, and radiant form. You weren't created to blend in with fear. You were crafted to rise above it. You weren't designed to echo the noise of culture. You were chosen to carry the stillness of God. You are the lighthouse in your family's storm, the one who refuses to sink even when the waves roar louder. You see beyond surface smiles. You feel tremors in the spirit before any quake hits the ground. You sense warning signs no one else even knows are there. Why? Because you're not just emotionally aware, you are prophetically wired. You're tuned in to the early frequencies of heaven's movement. And that gift, that responsibility, it's heavy, but it's also holy. Have you ever read about Deborah in Judges 4? She wasn't just a prophetess, she was a warrior, a judge, a leader of nations. Yet her greatest strength wasn't in her sword, but in her sight. She saw what others missed. She heard what others ignored. That's what made her dangerous to the enemy and priceless to her people. And isn't that what you've become? A quiet warrior, a spiritual anchor, a leader even when no one gave you a title. And in our time, consider the late Pope John Paul II, one of the most spiritually attuned leaders of the modern world. During times of global crisis, his calm was contagious. He once said, "Do not be afraid. Open wide the doors to Christ." His peace wasn't political, it was prophetic. And like him, your calm isn't passive, it's powerful. So when people wonder how you stay so composed, so grounded, so spiritually awake while others lose themselves, you know the answer. It's not because life is easier for you, it's because you were built to weather storms, not avoid them. You were born to lead others to safety, even when you're trembling yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you were born into your family, because God needed someone sensitive enough to detect what others denied, strong enough to stay when others ran, and faithful enough to believe when everything looked impossible. God has placed something rare within you, a gift not often seen, not easily understood, a supernatural discernment, a spiritual sensitivity that runs deeper than emotion and wider than logic. But make no mistake, this gift was never given to make you fragile. It was never meant to isolate you in pain. It was given to equip you, to position you not as a victim of the spiritual atmosphere, but as a protector of your family line. You have eyes that see cracks in the foundation long before they collapse. You hear the silent warnings no one else detects. Where others see peace, you notice the hidden turbulence. Where others settle, you stir. You sense danger before it materializes. You feel deception when the crowd applauds it. And when the world rushes headfirst toward false solutions, you're the one who quietly points to the truth. Because the truth is no longer just a belief for you. It's your burden and your responsibility. This isn't imagination, it's intercession. Ezekiel 33:7 says, "Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the people. So hear the word I speak and give them warning from me." Can you feel it now? The reason behind your heightened sensitivity. You were anointed to be a spiritual watchman, not just for your own sake, but for those who don't yet see the danger ahead. Maybe this gift has felt more like a curse in the past. Maybe it weighed on your soul like a constant ache, an invisible burden that no one seemed to understand. You've probably asked yourself more than once, why do I feel so much? Or, why does no one else notice what I see so clearly? But listen closely, the weight is not random, it's evidence of your calling. You were chosen precisely because you feel, because only those who feel deeply are capable of standing in the gap. Only those who discern the danger early can intercept it in prayer. While others are spiritually asleep, you're the one who stays awake, who watches, who wages war in silence for those too weary to fight. That's why your tears matter. That's why your silence has power. That's why your prayers, whispered at 3 a.m. when no one else knows what you're carrying, have moved mountains heavenward. Because you weren't created to live like everyone else. You were born to carry something eternal. You, chosen one, are the divine watchman over your family. You are the soul that intercepts curses, that breaks patterns, that holds the spiritual fort until others wake up. Like Nehemiah rebuilding Jerusalem's wall, stone by stone, while enemies plotted from the shadows, you too have been rebuilding something sacred in the unseen. And when the storm comes, and it will, they'll remember you. They'll turn to the one who was mocked for being too serious, too spiritual, too intense, but who, when it truly mattered, never left the wall. In our modern world, spiritual leaders like Corrie ten Boom, a Dutch Christian who helped hide Jews during the Holocaust, used her discernment not just to protect her family, but to save lives. She later said, "Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God." And that's the kind of faith you carry. That's the kind of strength God has cultivated in you, quiet, powerful, and unwavering. So if you've ever felt alone in your gift, misunderstood in your awareness, or crushed beneath the weight of what others ignore, know this: you're not alone, you're not cursed, you're called, and the very gift that made you weep in silence will be the gift that makes others run to you in their storm. But there's still more to this sacred story unfolding within you, more to the reason why God entrusted you with such extraordinary sensitivity. It wasn't just to set you apart, It wasn't just to make you alert to spiritual shifts. The deeper truth, the one that will change how you see yourself forever, is this: your sensitivity isn't just about your survival. It's about the legacy you were born to protect. This gift wasn't placed in you to overwhelm you. It was placed in you, to anchor a generation, to stand guard over a bloodline that has fought silently for decades and perhaps never had a voice until you. Can you feel it? That what you've been sensing, carrying, battling through has never only been about you. Psalm 145:4 says, "One generation shall praise your works to another, and shall declare your mighty acts." What if your very life is the bridge between generations, declaring what God has done, protecting what God is building, preserving what others were too weary to carry forward? Your sensitivity is sacred. It allows you to detect spiritual tremors before anyone else knows the ground is shaking. You feel darkness creeping in long before others notice the shift. Why? Because you were born to be a guardian of legacy, a spiritual gatekeeper who doesn't just pray for the now, but intercedes for the next. You weren't chosen to chase trends. You were chosen to protect timelines, to shield futures, to cover destinies not yet awakened in your bloodline. Think of Esther, hidden, sensitive, strategic. Her sensitivity to timing saved her people from destruction. Mordecai's words still echo through time in Esther 4:14. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Doesn't your spirit recognize that same sense of divine timing rising inside you? You are not just emotionally aware, you are prophetically positioned. And this next part of your calling is where everything changes. Because once you see your role not as a burden, but as a blueprint, you stop shrinking. You start stepping forward with clarity, confidence, power. Even in modern times, leaders like Cardinal Robert Sarah, known for his deep spiritual discernment and silence in a noisy world, wrote, "Silence is more important than any other human work, because it expresses God." Could it be that the silence you've been drawn into, the inner life you've cultivated, was never weakness, but preparation to speak what others don't have the discernment to say? So now, let's dive deeper, not just into what you feel, but why you were chosen to feel it, why your awareness is tied to something bigger than you, bigger than today, bigger than your name. Because the more you understand your spiritual assignment, the more you'll see. Your gift was never about fitting in. It was always about rising up. And what you uncover next might just unlock the part of your calling that's been waiting in silence for this very moment. Let's speak a truth few families ever dare to say out loud. The kind of truth that lingers in the silence but never makes it into words. Every bloodline, no matter how noble, respected, or traditional, carries shadows. Cycles that creep through generations, disguised as just the way things are. Patterns passed down like heirlooms, not in jewelry or land, but in wounds. Wounds no one talks about. There's the poverty that's inherited not just through finances, but through mindset. The kind that whispers, "We don't ask for more because we never had it." There's addiction hidden behind silence and shame, rebranded as habit, normalized through denial. There's emotional absence, the kind where people live in the same house but never know each other's hearts. There's unspoken abuse, dreams buried before they ever had the chance to breathe. How many destinies in your family line died in silence before they even had names? But then something shifts. A soul is born that doesn't match the rhythm, a spirit that won't sit quietly in patterns, a person who questions what everyone else just calls normal. That soul is you. You don't ignore the tension, you feel it. You don't pretend everything is fine. You carry a knowing in your bones that things must change. Could it be that you were born to confront what others denied for generations? Jeremiah 1:5 says, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Doesn't that verse strike something in your spirit? That even before the dysfunction began to shape your environment, God had already shaped you to be the one to break it. You are not a mistake. You are not too sensitive. You are not the problem. You are the answer someone prayed for decades ago. You are the fulfillment of a grandmother's silent cry, a grandfather's broken hope, a mother's unspoken longing. You are the soul awake enough to say, "This ends with me." Have you ever wondered why you're so different from your siblings? Why you notice what they ignore? Why your spirit aches in places where others feel numb? It's not coincidence, it's calling. You weren't born to inherit dysfunction, you were born to interrupt it. Just like Joseph in Genesis, you may have been thrown into a pit by the very people who should have protected you, not because you were weak, but because they could sense your spiritual royalty before you could even explain it. Genesis 50:20 echoes Joseph's revelation, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Could it be that your pain was the gateway to your purpose? And the cost, it's high. It often feels like rejection, like exile, like being misunderstood even in rooms that share your DNA. But isn't that the price of light? To shine in places where people are used to darkness? You carry spiritual eyes that see tremors before the earthquake. You hear spiritual tension behind smiles. You feel curses trying to cling. But you also feel the power of God breaking them off with every prayer you whisper. Have you noticed how much heavier your spirit feels when you're back in certain environments? That's not weakness, it's spiritual intelligence. You were never designed to adjust to dysfunction. You were called to undo it. Isaiah 61:1 declares, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners." This is your mission. This is your mantle. And just like Nehemiah, rebuilding broken walls while surrounded by enemies, you've been quietly rebuilding the spiritual structure of your family, brick by brick, prayer by prayer, even when it hurts, even when no one claps. But what if all the heaviness, all the spiritual alertness, all the battles weren't proof that you're cursed, but confirmation that you're chosen? What if your very sensitivity is heaven's signal that you've been raised up for such a time as this? Esther 4:14 echoes now more than ever. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? So don't shrink. Don't apologize for the fire in your spirit. You were born to disrupt, to protect, to rise and to heal. Your family's legacy is shifting because you said yes, not with fanfare, but with faith. And if the weight feels too heavy, remember, you're not lifting it alone. You weren't sent here to continue what was. You weren't born to repeat cycles, wear the same chains, or walk the same broken paths your ancestors were forced to endure. You were sent to end it, to be the living declaration that says, "This curse breaks with me." You were chosen to confront the strongholds others avoided, to touch the pain that everyone else suppressed, and to stand face to face with the mess and say without flinching, "No more. This ends here." Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's isolating. And yes, there are nights when your soul whispers, "Why me?" You've questioned the fairness of your role more times than you've admitted aloud. But here's the truth. You were never meant to fit in. God never intended for you to walk through life unnoticed, untouched, unaffected. You weren't born to blend into dysfunction. You were born to rebuild. And that kind of calling, it carries a price. It costs comfort. It costs belonging. It costs the illusion that things are okay when your spirit knows they're anything but. How many times have you had to pretend? To smile when your discernment was screaming? To keep peace externally while waging war internally? But here's what no one told you when you were younger. Your soul carries spiritual DNA that has been divinely coded for transformation. You are not like the others, not because you're better, but because you've been assigned a higher responsibility. You were born with a blueprint from heaven, and heaven refuses to let you settle. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." What if your refusal to conform isn't rebellion, it's revelation? What if your transformation is the key that unlocks breakthrough, not just for you, but for generations to come? What broke them will not break you. What silenced them will only amplify your voice. What enslaved them will submit under your authority. You carry a spiritual resistance, a divine resilience that cannot be inherited through earthly means. It comes straight from the Spirit of God. And when others buckle under spiritual pressure, you rise. Not because you're invincible, but because you're anointed. And this calling, it goes beyond destruction. You weren't just born to break chains. You were born to build altars. You're not just tearing down what was broken. You're constructing places of worship, healing, and truth where deception once ruled. Think of Elijah standing on Mount Carmel, rebuilding the altar that had been torn down for generations. Before calling down fire, before proving God's power, he rebuilt the altar. 1 Kings 18:30. Could it be that your tears, your prayers, your sacrifices have been doing the same? Rebuilding what your bloodline forgot, restoring sacred spaces in the Spirit. You're establishing altars of healing in places where trauma once echoed. You're raising altars of restoration over the ruins of broken trust. You're laying altars of truth on top of generational lies that poisoned your lineage. And you do it not with stone and hammer, but with your yes, with your prayers, with your obedience when no one is watching. Even in modern times, there are those who have answered similar calls. People like Mother Teresa, who stepped into the pain of the forgotten and built not cathedrals, but altars of compassion. She once said, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other." Isn't that what you're doing now? Remembering, restoring, reclaiming what was lost. So no, you're not here by accident. You're here as an architect of redemption, a restorer of broken places, a builder of altars that heaven will look upon and say, "This is holy ground." Let others settle. Let others pretend. But as for you, God has carved your name into the foundation of something eternal. You were born to rebuild what the enemy tried to destroy. You are the first in your family to boldly declare, "I forgive so I can be free." The first to break the agreement with bitterness. The first to say, "I will not carry what does not belong to me. I will not pass down what I had to survive." You've chosen peace over pride, healing over hiding. You've made the decision to raise your children in love, not fear, in truth, not tradition. You've decided to bless the next generation not just with better things, but with a brand new spiritual beginning. And maybe no one in your family has said it to you, but you are the one your ancestors prayed for. Even if they never lived to see you, they cried for you. In dark corners behind closed doors, in moments of desperation they never spoke of. You were the whisper on their lips, the hope they never dared to name out loud. And here you are, walking in the answer to a prayer they thought would die in silence. Have you ever felt the weight of something ancient resting on your shoulders? A sense that your life matters not just for you, but for everyone who came before and everyone who will come after. That's because it does. You are the reset your bloodline has been waiting for, the divine interruption, the spiritual course correction. While others in your family may not understand your path, may call you too intense, too different, too deep, heaven knows exactly who you are. You were not sent to be understood. You were sent to be obedient. John 15:16 says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last." Your life is not random. Your pain is not wasted. Your decision to walk a higher road has eternal ripple effects. You are the warrior God handpicked and dropped into the center of generational fire, not so you would burn, but so you could pull others out. You carry the authority to transform curses into callings, to convert wounds into wisdom, to turn pain into power and history into holy ground. Like Moses, who returned to the place of his trauma to deliver the very people who once rejected him, you too were sent not to escape the fire, but to lead others through it. And like Moses, you may not feel qualified. But God never chooses based on human resume. He chooses based on spiritual readiness. Isaiah 61:3 declares that God gives his chosen beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of despair. Haven't you already seen the beginnings of that beauty rising from your ashes? And now, here you stand, at the intersection of history and destiny. You are the hinge on which the door of generations swings open. Behind you are the ruins. Ahead of you is restoration. And beneath your feet is the holy ground of decision. Will you keep walking, even when it costs you comfort? Will you keep building, even if you have to do it alone? Will you stay faithful to the assignment, even when the reward is delayed? Because you're not just walking for yourself anymore. You're walking for those who never made it out, and those who've yet to be born. But there's still one final truth you haven't yet uncovered. One last sacred key that unlocks the deeper reason behind everything you've endured. Because even after all you've survived, even after the chains you've broken, the trauma you've faced, the healing you've chosen, you can still feel it, can't you? That unmistakable pull inside your soul, a stirring you can't ignore, a holy tension that refuses to let you settle, a divine restlessness that follows you into every room, every season, every prayer. What is it? Why, even now, does it feel like something more is calling to you? It's because your story doesn't end with breaking. It doesn't conclude at the moment of escape or the final shattered chain. Your story continues. It ascends. And what comes next isn't just survival. It's significance. You were never meant to stop at freedom. You were always meant to walk in authority. There is a divine inheritance on the other side of your obedience, a mantle waiting on the other side of your surrender. And the very restlessness you've been feeling isn't a flaw, it's a signal. Heaven is drawing you forward, forward into the fulfillment of your purpose, forward into the place where restoration becomes leadership, where scars become strategies, where your healing becomes someone else's hope. Romans 8:19 says, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." Could that inner pull you feel be the very cry of creation, waiting for you to rise into who you truly are? Have you sensed that the breaking was just the beginning? That something is still unfolding, something far greater than what you imagined? Because it is. And that final revelation, that hidden truth that explains why you're still being called higher, is what we'll uncover next. It just might be the peace your soul has been waiting for your entire life. They may not see you right now. They may whisper about you in corners you no longer sit in. They may raise eyebrows, question your distance, misunderstand your silence. You've heard it before. Why are you always so serious? Why don't you just lighten up? Why do you always take the harder path? Why are you always praying? Why do you feel things no one else notices? Why can't you just be normal? But what they fail to see is what God has already shown you. You were never created to be understood in the moment. You were never meant to blend into dysfunction just to keep the peace. Because chosen ones don't live for applause. They live for impact. You weren't born for the now. You were born for what comes after. While others chase validation, you've been sowing seeds in silence, seeds no one saw, celebrated, or thanked you for. You prayed when no one else thought it mattered. You fasted when others feasted. You wept when everyone else laughed, and still, you stayed the course. Why? Because something in your spirit knew This isn't just about me. You've been breaking what others accepted, cutting ties with trauma, saying no to familiar pain. Every choice you've made in secret, every time you chose obedience over comfort, wasn't just a better decision. It was a generational shift. Psalm 126:5 promises, "Those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy." Could it be that your quiet obedience is watering a harvest your future family will live in? One day, maybe years from now, your children or their children will live in peace, not realizing they are walking through doors you opened through sacrifice. They'll drink from wells you dug with weary hands. They'll rest on foundations you laid with your prayers, your fasting, your tears. They'll feel freedom without knowing the chains you had to break first. Have you ever paused to wonder, what if your discomfort now is the reason your descendants will never know the same kind of suffering? Isaiah 58:12 says, "Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings." That's not just a promise, it's your identity. You are the restorer, the repairer, the reason peace will run in the veins of those who come after you. You're not just making better decisions. You are demolishing invisible ceilings that kept your ancestors spiritually stuck. You are building bridges in places where there used to be barricades. You are digging wells of wisdom so that no one behind you has to thirst for truth again. You are clearing spiritual land, blood-stained, battle-worn, so that those coming after you can build without bleeding. Think of Abraham. God didn't just bless him, he blessed his lineage. Genesis 17:7 declares, "I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you." That same kind of covenant is being carved into your family tree right now through your yes. And one day, your children will look around and say, "Why is our family so different now? Why is joy normal? Why is love easy? Why do we feel protected in ways we can't explain?" And the answer won't be loud. It won't come from a podium. It will echo through the DNA, passed from spirit to spirit, like a sacred whisper. Because someone stood when it would have been easier to sit. Because someone stayed when it would have been easier to run. Because someone said yes to God when no one else would. And that someone was you. You are not a coincidence. You are not here by chance. You are the fulfillment of ancient prayers, spoken by ancestors who never saw your face but cried out for a deliverer. You are the continuation of a divine legacy that began long before you were born. Your obedience is not just affecting today, it is echoing into eternity. Heaven sees what earth overlooks. The angels know your name. They have watched you rise in silence, weep in shadows, and stand alone in rooms that never made space for your voice. And while the world turned away, God never missed a single tear. Not one moment of your pain was wasted. Psalm 56 verse 8 tells us, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Can you feel that? Even the tears you cried in the dark were sacred to him. You are walking through fire, but not to be consumed. You're walking through fire to become the fire. The flame that will illuminate paths for those who come after you. A light that will never be extinguished. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel 3, you are not walking through the flames alone. There's a fourth figure in the fire with you. He walks beside you, not to rescue you from the heat, but to reveal your glory within it. And maybe, just maybe, years from now, a child in your bloodline will rise. A young soul with peace in their spirit and fire in their eyes, walking in strength they never had to fight for, praying prayers they never had to learn through trauma. And when they're asked, "Why are you so whole? Why are you so fearless?" they might not know what to say. But you will. You'll know it's because you stood when it hurt. You obeyed when it cost you everything. You believed when belief made you the odd one out. You chose purpose when popularity would have been easier. You followed the whisper of God when all the noise told you to quit. And the world may never hand you a trophy. It may never give you a title, a platform, or recognition, but heaven has already crowned you, not with gold, but with glory. 2 Timothy 4:7-8 speaks your legacy. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness. That crown, it's yours. Have you ever wondered why the warfare was so intense? Why the rejection cut so deep? Why your burden felt heavier than others around you? It's because your reward is greater. Your calling is generational. Your purpose is not limited to your name. It stretches through your bloodline, reshaping everything that follows you. And yet, before this journey ends, there's still one more truth you need to hear. One last revelation that will bring every unseen battle, every unanswered question, every sleepless night into full clarity. Don't walk away now. Stay close. Because what comes next may be the very moment your soul has been waiting for your entire life. The moment where everything finally clicks into place. If you've always felt different, distant, like you were carrying something too heavy for your age or stage in life, it's not because you're broken. It's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you were born for battle, spiritually wired for war, designed by heaven to confront what others tolerated. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to disrupt. God saw the generations before you, the trauma, the dysfunction, the silence, the shame. He watched the cycles spin like wheels no one could stop. But when he looked into your bloodline, he didn't see despair. He saw a shift waiting to happen. So he said, this one, this soul, this heart, this warrior will carry the change. Have you ever wondered why you couldn't pretend like others? Why you couldn't numb it out? Why you couldn't laugh away the weight that others never acknowledged? It's because God placed something in your spirit that refuses to accept spiritual mediocrity. You can feel when something is off, even if no one says a word. That's not emotional sensitivity, it's divine intelligence. You are not too much. You are not too intense. You are not overthinking. You are spiritually coded for the impossible. Luke 1:37 says, "For with God nothing shall be impossible." That includes your assignment. That includes your bloodline's redemption. That includes the healing that will ripple through generations because of your yes. And yes, it's a lonely road. You've sat in rooms full of people and still felt alone. You've cried tears no one noticed. You've carried burdens that had no language, no outlet, no understanding. At times, it has felt like the weight might crush you. And in those quiet moments, you've asked, God, did you forget me? But listen closely now. Let your soul hear this truth. You have never walked alone. From the first moment you were set apart, heaven has been assigned to you. The warfare didn't come because you were weak. It came because hell recognized what you carry. And heaven has never taken its eyes off you. Deuteronomy 31:8 says, "The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." Can you feel that promise anchoring your spirit right now? You are not just surviving, you are being refined. Your tears are not wasted, they are watering something holy. Your isolation isn't abandonment, it's preparation. You are not overlooked, you are overwatched by heaven itself. And here's the secret, the battle you're in is not a sign that you're losing. It's proof that you're the one chosen to win what others lost, to restore what others buried, to fight not just for yourself, but for every soul tied to your breakthrough. So when the road feels long, when your heart feels too full, when the silence feels loud, remember, you are called to carry the shift. And the angels, those heavenly witnesses who've watched you stand when you could have fallen, they know your name. The silence you endured, that wasn't abandonment, that was strategy. God wasn't absent. He was engineering your awakening in the stillness. The pain you felt, that wasn't punishment, that was preparation. Every tear, every ache, every unanswered prayer was carving out strength inside of you that couldn't be taught, only forged. And the isolation that nearly broke you, that wasn't rejection, that was revelation. God wasn't removing people to hurt you. He was clearing space so you could hear him without interference. Because those who carry legacy must first walk through fire. And here's what the fire couldn't do. It couldn't consume you. You didn't just survive it. You shine because of it. You walk with a glow that no spotlight can replicate. There is light in your eyes that didn't come from applause. It came from battle, from standing up when you had every reason to sit down, from rising when no one clapped, from trusting God when nothing made sense. Isaiah 43:2 gives you this promise. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. That wasn't just poetic, it was prophetic, because you've been through the kind of heat that should have destroyed you. But instead of ashes, you emerged with oil. Instead of bitterness, you carry boldness. Instead of fear, you carry fire. Have you ever noticed how much resistance you faced even as a child? How the enemy tried to silence you before you even found your voice? That wasn't random. That was spiritual warfare. Hell recognized what you would become long before you did. And it tried everything to shut you down before you could awaken. But look at you now, still here, still breathing, still rising, still carrying a mantle that hell couldn't kill, still speaking truth that darkness can't mute, still loving people even after betrayal, still believing in healing, in freedom, in legacy. That's not just strength. That's spiritual evidence that you were chosen for something higher. You are the fulfillment of Esther 4:14. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. This isn't just a nice verse. It's your story. You weren't just born at this time. You were positioned in this generation as a spiritual response to what others refused to confront. The darkness tried to end you, but heaven wrote a different ending. So, if you've ever wondered why the warfare was so personal, why the fire was so hot, or why your journey has felt so different, now you know. Because your survival is prophecy, your obedience is warfare, your presence is proof, and the time for hiding is over. You are here, you are rising, and you were chosen for such a time as this. So here is my final blessing to your spirit. Receive this not just as words, but as a mantle being placed upon your life. May every curse that ever haunted your family bow to the light you carry. May your voice break generational silence. May your hands build what fear tried to destroy. And may your life become the undeniable proof that God always saves his strongest warriors for the hardest battles. You are not just making better choices. You are rewriting legacy. You are restoring dignity to your name. You are rising with a strength that did not come from applause, but from obedience. What you are doing now may not be celebrated on earth, but it is being recorded in heaven. The seeds you sow in silence will one day bloom into freedom. Freedom your children will walk in without even knowing the price you paid. Freedom your family will taste without realizing whose sacrifice made it possible. And one day, when someone asks, "Why is our family different now? Why is peace finally normal? Why do I feel so protected, so blessed?" the answer will echo through generations like a sacred whisper. Because someone stood when it hurt. Someone obeyed when it cost. Someone believed when it was lonely. Someone chose purpose over applause. That someone was you. So, if this message stirred something deep in your soul, if you know this word was for you, I want you to comment these words with faith and boldness. I am the shift. Not because you seek attention, but because you are declaring alignment. You're saying to heaven, yes, I receive it. I accept it. I will carry it. Because when you declare it, you're not ending a video, you're beginning a movement. Comment below, I am the shift. Share what spoke to you most. Like this message if your spirit felt seen. Subscribe if you're ready to walk fully in your calling. And if you feel led to support this ministry and help carry this message further, you can give through Super Thanks. Your generosity keeps this light shining for others walking the same path. Whether you give or not, I want you to know this. You are deeply seen, fiercely loved, and eternally called. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are chosen. You are the shift. So rise, chosen one. Your time is now. Your voice matters. Your legacy begins today. I am the shift. Type it, declare it, live it, and never look back.